everyone. As promised on Instagram months ago, I said I was going to do a tutorial for this lovey blanket that I'd started. Now this is just 14 rows, so it doesn't take that long to complete. And I am literally going to do step by step for every single row. I'm not going to just get to a certain point and then finish the tutorial. I'm literally going to start and finish every single row, right from the very first one to the very end one with you. So I really hope that that will be useful. This is obviously a baby one that I started ages ago, and this was done using Rico yarn. I can't remember it off the top of my head now, but I will double check and pop it in the description. And the colours of this are beautiful and the yarn itself is wonderfully soft. So this is what we're going to be doing, and like I say, it is 14 rows and it is 12 points for this particular blanket. So you have got 12 points on this blanket, and once you've popped something in the middle, like I say, I will be doing something eventually, I'm not sure exactly when, of a little creature or something that I will pop on the top here, but I haven't got a tutorial for that just yet. I am working on a pattern for something, but that is a secret just for now. But I thought I'd just do the lovely blanket itself, because you may already have an idea of something that you want to pop on it anyway. So as you can see, once you pick it up, and if you had something on the top, it's just a nice size to be held and carried around by a little one. So let's get started. So for this one, I'm going to just be using some cream Colour Crafter, Shapey's Colour Crafter yarn, and I'm also going to use one of my favourite yarns. This is the Hayfield Baby Blossom yarn, and this is in Buttercup, and it's just so beautiful. You've probably seen, if you follow me on Instagram, that I've used their yarns quite a few times because I just love the effect that they give. So we are going to start with a chain of 4. So yarn over and pull through. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to turn this into a little circle. So you want to insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over and do a slip stitch. So you're going to pull through the loop on the hook as well. And that now gives us a little circle to work our stitches into. So you want to chain 3, and that is going to count as our very first treble crochet. Now that's UK treble, US double. So we want to have a total of 12 treble crochets, including that chain 3. So you want to now do 11 double crochets into that centre stitch. So yarn over and pull up, and you'll have 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So that is a chain 3 and a treble, so that is now 2. So again, yarn over and pull up, complete your treble, and like I say, you want to do 12, but that includes your chain from the beginning. So if you want to do all of your trebles into this centre circle, and I will meet you in just a second. So I've now got 12, and that includes my chain 3 from the beginning, and I have just counted to double check that. And so you want to find your third stitch from the bottom of that first chain 3 that you did. So 1, 2 and 3, and you're going to insert your hook into the top of that chain 3 and slip stitch. So pull through both of those loops. So that is the round 1 of your lovey. You now want to chain 3 again. So 1, 2 and 3. Now that we've chained 3, that is going to count as our final treble for this last stitch when we get to it. So we're going to move straight over now to our next treble, which is this stitch here. So you want to do 2 trebles into this stitch. So you want to yarn over, insert into that stitch, yarn over and pull up, and complete your treble. And again into that very same stitch you will do another treble. So that is 2 trebles in that stitch. You'll then move across onto your next treble just here, and again you're going to do 2 trebles into that very same stitch, and you're going to do that on each stitch around, doing 2 trebles into the top of each stitch. So if you want to do that, and I will meet you in just a second when we get towards the other end. Okay, so I'm just back at the other side now, and you can see I've done my 2 stitches into every one around, and then this chain 3 where we started from, I need to do 1 more treble next to that into this final stitch here. So I'm going to go into that final stitch and do 1 treble into there. And then when I connect to the top, that will count as this chain 3 counts as my second treble in that final stitch. So I'm going to find the top of the chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and slip stitch again. So that is row 1 and 2 of your lovey. So now we're going to work on row 3. And row 3 consists of V stitches. So we want to chain 3. And that is going to count as our final half of our V stitch for this stitch later on. We're actually going to move straight across now into another stitch and create a full V stitch. But they're not normal V stitches because we're actually going to chain 2 instead of chaining 1 for the V. So you're going to skip this funny little stitch just next to you here, and your first V stitch is going to go into this stitch here. So you'll yarn over, insert into that stitch, and do your treble, chain 2, and back into that same space you'll do another treble. And that is your first V stitch. You'll skip 1 and then do a V stitch into the next. Remember to chain 2 and treble back into that same space. Skip 1 and V stitch, and you'll do that all the way around till you get to the other side, well, the other where we started from. Skip 1. So if you want to do that, and I will meet you in just a second. I'm just nearing the end now. I've done my V stitch into this stitch here, and then I will skip this one here, and then just next to my chain 3 where I came up from, I will do a treble into that stitch just where our chain 3 starts from, and then a chain 2, and we will slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 to complete that final V stitch. So that is how you should be looking so far, and you should see when you lay it down it may curl very, very slightly at the edges, but the centre part and everything should sit nice and flat. So we're going to move on to row 4 now, and you can see we're just at the side of that V just here, but we want to actually get into the V itself. So you're just going to pop your hook straight into that next V and just do a little slip stitch to pull you across into that V space. You'll then chain 3, and then all into this same V stitch we're going to do a treble. So that chain 3 counts as our first treble, that is our second, chain 2, and then back into this V space, the same one, you're going to do 2 trebles. 1 and 2. So all into that same space you have got 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles. You're going to move across into the next V stitch and do the same thing. So 2 trebles, 1 and 2, and then you will chain 2, and back into that same V space you'll do 2 more trebles. And you will continue to do that all the way around. So 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles into every single one of your V stitches from the previous round. So 2 more trebles into here, and then I'll move on to my next V stitch. So if you want to complete that all the way around, and I will meet you as you get back towards the other side. So I've just completed my stitches into my final V here, and I am ready to connect to where we started from. So again, you're going to find that chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of that 3rd chain. And now is just a good time to take a minute and just check that you have got 12 points. They're not very defined at this point, but you just want to check that you've got 12 sets of these stitches. So I'm going to start just to the left of my loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So I'm good. I know that I will have my 12 points as I work up. So that is row 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I'm going to move on to row 5 and then I'm going to change colour as I start row 6, but obviously if you want to change colour at any point you can. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of my next treble here. So this treble just there, I'm going to slip stitch into there because I want to work out from that particular treble. So I'm going to chain 3 and then into the V space here I'm going to do my 2 trebles, 1 and 2, and then I will chain 2 and I will do 2 more trebles back into that V space, 1 and 2, and then you can see you've got a stitch at the top of that treble just there. So this stitch just here, because your other one at the top of this treble is slightly buried under all those stitches, so you're going to go to the neck to that stitch just there and you will do another treble. You'll then move across to this next set of V-stitch here and you will skip over the top of that first treble just there and you will go into the top of the next treble just before your chain 2 and you will do 1 treble into the top of that stitch and then you're back into your V again and you will do your 2 trebles, so 1, 2, and then you will chain 2 and then again 2 trebles back in that same V space. And then just as we did a moment ago, we're going to miss the top of this first treble here because it's slightly buried under your stitches, and you will do your 3rd treble into the top of the next treble. So this treble just here. And then again, you will skip over the next treble and you will do your treble into the top of the one just next to your chain 2 before your V space. And then again you will do your 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles back into that V space, 1 and 2, and then to create our 3rd treble you again will miss this first one just here and you will go into the next one of your set. So you can see that it is growing slightly because we're doing 3 trebles along our sides now. So if you want to carry on doing that, and I will meet you just as you get back towards your other side in just a minute. Again, I'm just coming towards the other part of my work now. I've just done my 2 trebles after my chain 2 and I need to do my final treble into this stitch just here. And then I'm ready to join my round, so I want to again find the top of that chain 3 and slip stitch. So I'm going to change colours now, so I'm just going to snip off. So that is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows that we have completed, and that is how you should be looking. So it should be laying nice and flat for you, it shouldn't be ruffling or rippling, it should be nice and flat. And we have started to get some definition in our points now. So row 6, so I'm going to attach my new yarn now. I'm going to pull my colour through and tie on. I'm going to try and make sure that I pull to the side when I tie on and not into the centre of the peak. I want to go right next to that treble. Pull up there and I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and again this is round 6 that we're on. So that is going to count as my first treble in this V, but again I want to do another treble in there chain 2 and 2 trebles, and again we're going to skip over this very first treble there because it is slightly covered by those stitches, so you're going to miss that first treble, and we are going to treble into the next 2 trebles. So you've got 3 trebles here, and you're going to skip the first one and treble into the next 2. So yarn over, insert and do a treble, and into the next one as well. We're then onto our next side where we've got 3 trebles. Again, you're going to skip the first one and treble into the next 2. So skip that first one and treble into the next, and the top of the next one as well. And then we're back to our V where we're going to do 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles. And then again we're going to skip over the first treble in this set and go into the next 2. So 1 and the final one on that side, and then again we're on to our next set, working up to our next point. You're going to skip the first one and treble into the next 2. Next one, and then again into your V you're going to do 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles all into that same V. But don't get lulled into a false sense of security when it comes to that, because every couple of rows that V stitch that we've just worked will be different. So don't just assume that that's what's going to happen every round, because it does change. So you can see now that as we're creating our peaks, we are also getting larger because we now have 4 trebles instead of 3 from the last round. So if you want to carry on working that pattern all the way around, and I will see you as you get onto this last stretch just here. I'm just getting towards the end of this particular round now. I just have my last edge to work here. So again, I'm going to skip over that treble and then do my last 2 trebles into those stitches. And then I'm ready to connect to the top of that chain 3. So 1, 2, 3 with a slip stitch. So that is how you're looking now. You may find that you have a very slight ripple, but that doesn't matter because we're not going to increase our stitches in the next row. So round 7 will have the same number of trebles as round 6 that we've just completed. So again, we're going to chain 3 to start, and that is going to count as our stitch for that treble, and then we're going to do 1 more treble into the top of the next treble. So into the top of this next stitch here, we'll do a treble again, and as we come back up we will finish that straight edge. But this is where I was saying things get slightly different. So into this V-stitch now, because we don't want to increase the amount of stitches we've got, we aren't going to do 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles. We're going to do 1 treble, chain 2 and 1 treble into that V space instead of 2. And then we're going to work back down this straight edge here. Again, because we don't want to increase our stitches, we want to make sure that we've got 4 trebles going down this side. So we've got 1 in that V space just here, and then you will skip this next treble like we have been doing, and you will work 1 treble into those 3 trebles just here. So yarn over, skip the first one, go into the next one and do a treble, and into the next one another treble, and the next one another treble. So you can see there we have got 4 trebles down that edge with our chain 2 there. So you've got 4 trebles, and then again we are going to skip the first treble as we work our way back up to the peak. So you'll skip this treble, but you will do 1 treble into the next 3. So 1, 2 and 3, just like before. But again, instead of doing 2 trebles, you will only do 1 treble in that V space, and then the chain 2 and 1 treble. And then you'll work your way back down, and again, because we're not increasing, you've done your 1 treble, you will skip this first one and do your 3 trebles into those 3 stitches. So skip the first, so that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then again, to work back up to the next peak, you'll skip this first one, work into the next 3, and then 1 treble, chain 2, and then you'll work your way back down. So if you want to pause now and work around and then meet me as you get back to the other side, remembering only to do 1 treble, chain 2, 1 treble in your V spaces, but rewind to the start of this row if you need to. I'm just coming to the end again now. So I've only got 3 trebles leading up to that peak, so I know that I need to skip this next treble here and then work 1 final treble into this final stitch just here. And then again, I'm ready to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3, and we're ready to move on to round 8. So again, this is how you should be looking, so it should be lying nice and flat for you. And the further on you work up your pattern, the more defined obviously the points will be. So don't worry that it is looking relatively round at the moment. That will sort itself out in a little while. So again, we're going to start on to round 8 now. So we want to chain 3. And we want to increase this time, so we want to go from 4 to 5 stitches on each side. So we are going, that is going to count as our treble for this stitch here, and then we will work into the top of the next 2. So treble into the top of the next 2 trebles, and then we're back to our normal V stitch again, where we do 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles. So that's 2 trebles, chain 2, and 2 trebles all into that same space. And again, we're going to skip over this first treble here and do 1 treble into these 3 trebles here, and with the 2 that we've just done, that will give us 5 trebles down our sides. 2 and into this third one here. So you can see that has now given us 5 trebles down this side, and as always we're going to skip over this first treble after our dip, and we're going to do 1 treble into those 3 stitches, so 1 and 2 and then 3. Oops. And then again we're at our peak, so we want to do 2 trebles this time, followed by a chain 2, and then 2 trebles back into that V space. And then again you're going to skip over the first one just here and treble into the top of the next 3, and again that will give you 5 stitches down each side, because we're doing our 2 trebles instead of 1. So if you want to carry that on for round 8, and again I will meet you when you get back towards where we started. So I'm just coming towards the end of this round. Obviously I've done my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches on this edge here, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches on that edge there. So all I need to do now is join my rows. So I'm just going to slip stitch into that top of that chain 3. So that is row 8 completed. So we're now going to move on to row 9, and we're going to increase again on this round so that we have got 6 stitches along each side. So I don't want to just chain 3 to start this row, because that would mean that it would make a treble for this stitch here, and I don't want to make a treble on the top of that stitch because we always skip that first stitch as we move across. So I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this next treble just here. So I'm going to go into the top of that stitch and slip stitch across. So now when I do my chain 3, I'm coming out of the top of that treble instead of this one here. So that counts as my treble for that stitch, and then I'm obviously going to treble into the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. So I've now got 4 trebles there, and I'm going to do my normal V-stitch, so 2 trebles, which will give me 6 on this side. Chain 2, and again 2 trebles, I'm going to skip over that first treble and do 1 into each of the next 4 stitches to make 6. 2, 3, and this is my 4th stitch. So that now has given us 6 trebles along this side and 6 trebles along that side. So just as in all the other rows, we're going to skip over the first treble on the way back up, and we're going to work into the 4 trebles and then do 2 in our V. So skip the first, and then 1 treble into the next 4 stitches, 3 and 4, and then 2 in the V to make our 6, and then chain 2, chain, and then 2 into that V space again, and we're ready to work back down. So we've got 2, and we're going to skip the first again and then do 3, 4, 5 and 6, and you're going to do that all the way around again, and I will meet you at the other side as we close round 9. So just want to do that now, and I'll meet you in just a second. I've just done my last side of 6 stitches, and obviously I already know that I have 6 stitches from where I started off before, so I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3, and that completes round 9. So we're going to move on to round 10 now, and on round 10 we don't want to increase any stitches, so we still want to have 6 trebles going up and down each side of our V-stitch at the top. So we achieve that just in the same way that we did before, by instead of doing 2 trebles and 2 trebles in that V-stitch, we will only be doing 1 and then a chain 2 and then 1 more. But again, I don't want to be in the top of this treble here, I want to be into the next one, so I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that next treble and then chain 3. And I'm ready to work back up this side. So that is my treble for this stitch here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then my 6th treble will be in the V space. So remember, just 1 treble this time instead of 2, because we don't want to increase our stitches. Chain 2, 1 more treble back into that V space, and then as before you're ready to work down your side, missing this very first treble here, and going into the next. So we've got 1, and that will be our second, third, fourth, fifth, and then our 6th one goes in that final treble. And then obviously at this point you will work your way back up to your next point, and as always you'll miss that very first treble here and you will go into the next one, and then you will do 6 trebles. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then your 6th one again will be in your V, and you will only be doing 1 treble with a chain 2 and then 1 more, and then you'll work your way back down the other side as we did a moment ago, and that will be round 10. So if you want to complete that now, and I will meet you back at the other end. I'm just coming to the end of this round again, and I know I've got my 6 stitches, so I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 as normal, and then we're ready to go on to round 11. And on this round we're going to start to define our points a little more. So we want to increase on this round, but again I want to slip stitch into the top of the next treble, and then I'm going to chain 3 to start, and then I will do 1 treble into the top of the next set of trebles. So I've done my treble for this one just here, and then I will do 1 treble into each treble on my way up to my peak, and we're back to doing 2 trebles followed by a chain 2 and 2 trebles in the V space. So we're back to 2 trebles now, and now we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 stitches on this side. And this is where things are going to get slightly different now. So we're going to do our chain 2 and then 2 trebles, but instead of skipping over the next treble like we have been doing previously, we're going to actually work our stitch into the top of this very first treble. So we've got 2 and we want 7. So we're going to go into the very top of this stitch here, and then so now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and you can see we've now got 1 stitch left before our dip, which normally we would have worked into, but because we've worked into the very first treble instead, we're going to skip 2 stitches now. So we're going to skip this treble and this treble, and then we're going to work our 7 stitches up the next side. So you're going to skip this one and this one, and then work your 7 trebles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then obviously 6 and 7 are done into the V space. So 6 and 7, chain 2, and then 2 trebles back into that V space. Oops, 1 and 2, and remember you're working into that first treble from now on. So that's make 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again now we're going to skip over that last treble before the dip and the first treble after the dip, and you're going to work your 7 trebles all the way up. So 1 into the next 5 trebles, 4, 5, and then 2 in the V, chain 2. I'll just do this last one with you, and then 2 more trebles. And remember, we are working in that very first treble after the V for the first time. All the other rows we've skipped it, but this time we are working into it. So that is our 3rd, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And again, you'll have 1 stitch left before your dip, but you're going to skip that one and the first one working back up, and you're going to repeat that all the way around until you get to the other side. So remember, you're skipping 2 stitches in the dip and working into the very first treble after your V. So if you want to do that, and I will meet you in a second. So I'm ready to close off on round 11 with my slip stitch into my chain 3. And you can see that the points now are starting to get much more defined. You could start defining the points a little earlier on, but I quite like keeping it relatively round and ripply almost, and then I like to create the more dramatic points with the last few rows. So that's the end of row 11. So for row 12, you want to slip stitch across into the top of the next treble again, and chain 3. And on row 12 we are increasing again, so we're going from 7 this time to 8. So that is our first treble for that stitch, and then you will do 1 treble in the top of every stitch on the way up. So we've got 1 already, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then obviously 7 and 8 will be in our V stitch. So 7 and 8, chain 2, 2 trebles to start our next side of this peak, and 2. And again, we are, from now on we will always be working into this very first treble and skipping 2 at the bottom instead. So we've done our increase, so we've got our 2 trebles, but we need 8, so into that very first treble again. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then again we've got 1 treble left before our dip, which we are going to skip over, and we will skip over our first one on the way back up as normal. So you'll skip this one, and then we want 8 stitches on the way back up again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then obviously 7 and 8 are in our V space again. 7 and 8, so chain 2. And again you're going to do your 2 trebles back into that V, 1 and 2, and then you will do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and skip over 2 at the bottom again. So that will be how we are going to complete round 12, and I will see you at the other side in a minute. So again, I'm just getting to the end of round 12, and I'm going to slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. This is how you should be looking so far. Don't worry if your points curling very slightly, they will flatten out. So this is looking really, really beautiful. So I'm going to do 1 more round in this particular yarn, and then I'm going to swap back to my cream. That's just a personal preference. I just always like to finish on the same colour that I started with, but obviously you can do whatever you like. So round 13, you're going to slip stitch into the top of the next treble as always. And we aren't going to increase on this round, so at the end of this round we still want to have 8 stitches going up and down in between each peak and dip. So I'm going to do a chain 3, and then obviously I'm going to do 1 treble into all of the trebles going up this side now, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and then our 8th and final stitch will be in that V, and then we're going to chain 2. So we're just back to keeping them the same, so no increase, so we will only be doing 1 treble, chain 2, 1 treble into each of our V stitches, but the rest of the technique will be the same. So that is our first treble to work back down, and again now we are going to be working in that very first treble, that very first one, and we will do 7 more. So that's 1 and 2, and remember we want 8. So 3, 4, 5, 6, oops, 6, 7, 8, and then we will skip that final stitch before the dip and the very first one after like normal, and then we will do 8 trebles, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then our 8th and final one will be in the V space, and then chain 2, and you're going to work back down the other side as normal. So 1 more treble back into that V space, and then 7 more trebles starting in your very first treble just here and skipping over the one before and the one after the dip. So I will meet you at the other end to close off round 13. So again, I've just completed my last side, and I just need to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 from the beginning of this round, and then like I said before, I'm actually going to fasten off and start with another colour for my final round, but obviously you don't have to do that, that is just what I want to do. This is how I'm looking now, so it does lie pretty much perfectly flat. The only thing is obviously my edges on my points are very, very slightly curling in, but I will sort that out in a little while. So I'm going to go back to my cream, and I'm going to attach this into one of my V spaces. And I'm going to tie on as always. And for this very final round now, you'll be glad to hear this is the last one, we are going to increase. So if you were carrying on in the same colour, you would literally, you'll have come up from the stitch down here, so you would just slip stitch across as always into the top of the next treble, and we're going to have 9 trebles now. So you will slip stitch and then you will chain 3, and then you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trebles into the tops of these stitches, and then your final 2 will be in your V space here, followed by your chain 2, and then 9. So round 14 is an increase round, and as I say, this will be the final round for this pattern. So I've done my 2 trebles here, I've done my chain 2, and then I'm going to do 2 more trebles, 1 and 2, and then my 7 will work down the side, and again I am starting in that very first treble just here. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So I've now got my 9 stitches down this side, and again we're going to miss the last treble and the first one, and then we will start on this one here and work 9 trebles, so 7 and then 2 in your V space. And that is what you're going to do for the whole of round 14, and I will meet you as you get back to the other end, and we will fasten off and have a little look at what we've completed. So I'm just getting back to the end of this round. Obviously if you hadn't changed colours you would have just needed to slip stitch once you'd completed this last section here. You would have slip stitched into the start of the next row of trebles, but because I attached a new colour I started up in the corner. So I've just finished my 7 trebles here, and I've got my 2 already there from my increase, and I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 at the beginning, and then I'm just going to chain 1 and I'm ready to fasten off. I'm going to snip off and then just pull that tail through. So that is it, that is the end of your little lovey blanket. So this is how it should be looking. It should be nice and flat. It shouldn't be rippling as you go around, like I say. As you can see, just zoom out a little bit. It is nice and flat. It doesn't ripple, as you can see. I've still got my 12 points. But that is it for the blanket section itself, and obviously now it is up to you. You can just leave it as it is, or you can make something to attach into the middle here. I would just have a little flick through any magazines you've got, have a little root around on YouTube and just see what you can find, because there are lots of stuffed animals and things, the tutorials that you can find on YouTube, and obviously patterns in crochet magazines and crochet books. So you could literally just make the head section of whatever you wanted to put on, whether it's a dragon or a doll for like a princess, or even a boat. If you'd done like a sea coloured one, you could make a little boat for the top. So the possibilities are absolutely endless of what you can attach to this blanket, or you can literally just leave it as it is, as just a little mini blanket, like a security blanket that a little one can just carry around with them. But that is it for this lovely tutorial. All that's left now is for me to weave in my ends, but I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. I know it's been a long one, but well done if you've got to the end of it with me. And please remember to go and find me on Instagram and tag me in anything that you make from any of my tutorials. I love seeing them. I always go and check them out. And remember to like and subscribe to Blossom Crochet, because there is something new every week for you. But that's it for this one, and I will see you again very soon for another one. But thanks for watching. Bye for now.